Hello and welcome to this live webinar about how to convince your board and your seniors about the importance of investing in fundraising. I hope the technicalities work. I hope you can all hear me and see me clearly. Maybe you can just drop a quick comment in the side box if you can hear and see me clearly, because we've had issues in the past. My name is Eva Wieners. I just finished my PhD in geography, and I have worked in fundraising and in the philanthropy sector for basically the last 10 years. The last 7 years I was based in Nepal, so I have a lot of experience in Asia. I've also worked in South America, in Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, and in Europe. Originally, I'm from Germany, I just did my PhD with the University of Hamburg. I work with proposals for NGOs and philanthropia since 2015, and in the last 2 years we have developed a homepage called Proposals for NGOs, and that's probably how you all found us, where we collect resources about fundraising and more about proposal writing and how you can write a winning proposal and how you can convince donors that your project, your proposal is going to be a winner. Perfect. Thank you, Amrita, so you can hear me. That's a relief. Okay. So today the topic of this webinar is how to convince your donor, not your donors, how to convince your seniors and your board maybe that investing in fundraising is an important thing, because maybe we also offer online courses, we offer training, we offer ebooks, we have a lot of resources that of course we also have to sell, because somehow we have to make money. We can't offer everything for free. We have many free resources on our homepage. We share a lot at cost, but for some things we have to charge because we have an office as well that we have to run. But every time, or many times, when we say our prices, when we talk with people, the thing that we hear over and over again is, yeah, this sounds fantastic, this is exactly what I need. I'm going to write a proposal for USAID next month, and this course about fundraising from USAID would be perfect, but we don't have the resources. My seniors don't approve of me buying a course. They don't want me to spend money. We don't have a budget. All of these things. So we've come across this for so many times, and of course, on a very kind of personal level, it bothers us, because we have to. This is how we sustain our company. This is how we make it possible to offer so much content for free, is that we have to sell our very high-end courses. But on the other hand, I also realized time and time again that this is a thing that holds NGOs back. This understanding of not spending anything in staff education, not spending anything on tools that will actually save you resources, is a thing that is very typical for the philanthropy sector and for NGOs and foundations. And it's something that will hold us back as an entire sector, because we're not looking at things the way a business would look at investments. So that's why we decided to make this webinar today. So I will talk about some of the reasons why you should look at fundraising investment as an investment instead of a cost, why it is so important. And in the end, I will give you some points that you can use when you want to convince your board or your senior that it's a good thing to actually spend some money on fundraising education or on any fundraising tools that will help you, because it will make sense. At the end of this training, we'll have a chance to answer questions. So just stick around and you can ask me questions about fundraising. I will try to answer as many as I can. And of course, if you have some more specific questions about the topic of this webinar, you're very welcome to ask them, and I will be happy to answer them as much as I can in this time. I think we can all get started. We're all busy, so I don't want to take too much of your time. Let me just switch over to my PowerPoint. Here we go. Okay, so I hope you can all see the PowerPoint now. So as I said, today's topic is why should you invest in fundraising and how you can sell this idea to your board. Because, of course, many of you know that this is important. Many of you know that you have to make some investments to get better. But maybe your board doesn't. Maybe your board is under the understanding that you should save as much money as possible. And doesn't want to give you approval for these spending. So at the end, I'll also have some tips for you on how you can convince your board that this is actually a good idea. So in the beginning, I want to talk a little bit about this idea or this perception that many NGOs have that they shouldn't spend money in basically anything that is not essential to the project work in their NGO. We see that over and over again with all kinds of costs. This is the idea of keeping the overhead as low as humanly possible, which is a good idea in the beginning. And there have been some scandals in the past where donors and also people who gave money, not only the big institutional donors, but also private donors, realized that out of their dollar that they gave for starving children, more than 50 cents went to overhead cost. Of course, that's not a good thing, but this kind of created this movement of moving away from overhead cost. Like I said, in general, this is a good idea, but you don't have to overdo it. And you still have to run an institution, you're still running an organization, and running an organization will always cost some money. And if you don't spend that money, you will just lose in quality. So what many NGOs have done is so that it doesn't show up as overhead, they moved many tasks that were done, for example, by a fundraiser before, by an accountant before, to the project managers. And this way it looks like the project managers do all the work, and on the papers it looks like there's no overhead because it's all project related. Of course, that's not true, and it will always result in lower quality because a project manager probably knows the project perfectly and they know very well what they have to do, but they don't know anything about accounting, and their results will always be worse than the results of an actual accountant. They don't know anything about fundraising, and their results will always be worse than those of an actual fundraiser. So that is one mistake. When organizations actually kept their people in their positions, but they stopped kind of paying a lot of money for them because they didn't want it to show up as overhead. And I think that's a great mistake. You have to keep overhead costs reasonable, of course. You shouldn't go out on a splurge and just spend lots and lots of money. But if the overhead cost is too low, I think that's also a red flag, because that means that the organization is not run professionally, and that should never be the case. So that's one of the mistakes that many NGOs make. Actually, when I personally, people always ask me, because I've been working in this sector, like who should I donate to? What should I look out for? And most people think, the lowest possible overhead. And I always say, no, I don't look for that. When I look at overhead, if an organization says they have 20 to 30% overhead, for me that's fine. That's a sign of a professionally run organization. If they say we only have 5 or 10% overhead cost, for me that's a red flag. Of course, that looks like if I give $1, 90 cents of that dollar will go to the project. But if the project is run badly, then maybe with that the impact that they can achieve with those 90 cents is much lower than if they have overhead of 30% and 70 cents of my dollar go to the project, but it's spent in a professional way. So that's always the advice I give for people who ask me whom to give money to. So this idea is something that I think we have to overcome in the philanthropy sector, but it's an idea that is stuck in the head of many people on boards of organizations and many seniors. Then what I always hear over and over again as well is the fear of losing staff after training. So that seniors or board members say, well, but if we train our staff, if we give them access to fundraising training, to any other training, to human development, they will just leave and move on to the next organization. And while it is true that turnover in the philanthropy sector is extremely high, or in the NGO sector is very high, I think not training people and not giving people what they need to become better at what they're doing is not the solution. That's not going to solve anything, because it just results in people being unhappy and moving on even faster. Of course, there's always the risk that people will just take an opportunity and take a training and then move on. But there's also the chance that people see you as a good employee who spends money on developing their stuff, um, and is going to work with you to become better as an organization and for you to become better as an employee. So I think this is like a two-sided thing, and both sides are true somehow. But I would always go for the side of trusting stuff, and supporting each other, because that will always bring better results. And in general, we can say that most organizations look at fundraising expenses as a cost. They just, if you approach them and say, oh, there's this training I want to take about writing a proposal, about how to fundraise from the European Commission, they just think of the cost and they never look at the benefits. So they just think of the money lost, and they don't look at it as an investment. But if you look at those things as an investment, and you can start calculating return on investment and stuff like that, people will realize that it makes actually a lot of sense. It's one of the things that makes most sense to invest in fundraising, because the direct result, if you become better at fundraising, you will receive more money. It's one of the most easiest things there are. If you learn how to apply for grants, eventually you will get a grant if you do your job well. So the return on investment is very high. So in the next 15 to 20 minutes, I will go a little bit more in detail about over these points, and how you can actually really convince your board to change their mind and to give you a chance to prove that it makes a lot of sense to invest in you as a person, as an employee, and to invest in the fundraising department of your organization, because it is the one that will actually create return on investment. First, let's just talk a little bit about what investment in fundraising actually means. So, of course, we've talked about education now, because this is also the field that we are working in. You can do in-house trainings, you can go to a workshop, you can go to a conference, you can attend online training, all of that. You can take courses to make you better at fundraising. But there's also the possibility to buy access to a database, for example. There's many tools that make fundraising easier that you can purchase, and they will actually save you a lot of time. So that could be, for example, a database. We will very soon also have a database of foundations available on our website. So look out for that, because that was actually something that, yes, costs you some money in the beginning, but then in the end you don't have to spend all the time looking for those foundations, doing the research. So it will actually save you resources, probably, because you always have to keep in mind that your time is worth money as well. Sometimes we forget that, and we think our work is free, but it's not. It's also, it has a value. So if you think you spend 10 hours a month researching foundations, and 1 hour for you cost $20 an hour, which would be extremely cheap. That's $200. So many of those databases cost that on an annual basis. So it would make a lot of sense. You just have to kind of switch the perception. Investment in fundraising can also mean hiring a consultant. I'll talk a little bit more about that on the next slide. And yeah, tools that make it easier. I already mentioned databases, but there's also other softwares that help you organize your data about foundations, that help you organize, track your proposals, and all of these things. So it makes a lot of sense to look into these tools and to decide which one of them makes sense for you, which will save time and thus also save money for your organization. So yeah, now I want to talk a little bit about if it makes sense to hire a consultant for fundraising. We get this question a lot. We also get many requests if we could write a proposal for people, if we have consultancy services, and stuff like that. First of all, we don't offer direct consulting services for small NGOs because we don't believe in that. we think it's better to build the fundraising capacity within your own organization, because if you spend money on a consultant and as like unluckily, but paying a consultant many times is the thing that boards and seniors are most inclined to do. If they have any money, the first go-to thing they think of is, oh, let's hire a consultant, because it's something they know. It's a person. It's an expert, and they think they're buying in greater knowledge, and that will actually help. But we believe that it's better to build the fundraising capacity within your organization, because if you hire a consultant, they can write a proposal for you, but they will never know the project as well as you do. They will probably just take out some knowledge. They will also take some of your time, write a proposal. It might be successful or it might not be successful. Then move on to their next project, and you submit the proposal, and if you get the money, great. If you don't, then you're stuck, and then you have to start all over again, because you don't know how that consultant actually prepared the proposal. Maybe you know bits and pieces, but you don't know the entire process, and you have learned nothing. So we're actually not recommending particularly small NGOs who don't have a constant budget for consultants to have them write your proposals. You can hire a consultant for specific tasks, though, within the process, and you can. It's the same with volunteers. I see many small NGOs that work with international volunteers, and they have them write their proposals. But I don't think that's a good idea, because, like I said, it's the same thing as with consultants. They don't know the project as well as you do, and they will just leave with all their knowledge, and they will not leave this knowledge with you. So it's always better if the project managers, or if you have a fundraiser, or even the board, if you learn within your organization, and that will always go a long way, because then the next time you can write the proposal, you can adjust the proposal, and you know all the bits and pieces. That's always better. But if you want to work with a consultant, if you want to work with a volunteer, you can outsource specific tasks. Something like donor research, for example, something that you can outsource. I always recommend, if you have someone at hand, maybe not a consultant, but if you have volunteers, let them proofread, because that is such an important part of the proposal writing process, to have the perfect proposal without mistakes. And if English is not your native language, or French or Spanish, or in whichever language you submit, have someone proofread. And if you have volunteers, or even if you have a consultant, that might be something that is really helpful, because the first impression of your proposal is super important. So decide which parts are parts that you think you can outsource. And otherwise try to keep these things within your organization, and take the money you want to spend on a consultant and spend it on education of your own stuff, because then you can do it all over again. Then the next time you see an interesting call, you can just tell your staff, well, you learned all these things, now apply them, and have them write the proposal, and then it's internal, and then you have the knowledge. So we've talked a lot about all the things that are kind of set up against getting funding for fundraising, or having a budget allocated for fundraising. So are there actually any things you can do to convince your board to invest in fundraising? And of course there are. So we'll go through that. I also want to say again, I don't have a single slide for that, but if you take one of our courses about the strategy, making a fundraising strategy, which is the first step and one of the most important steps of your fundraising process, to have a coherent strategy in place. One of the biggest steps there is to allocate a budget, and that's a step that many people jump over. They just think, oh, now we know what to do, now we're good to go. Allocating a budget is a very important step in the process of developing a strategy. And we talk about that in detail in all our courses that concern the fundraising strategy. So that knowledge that you gain in those courses is also something that you can use to convince your board, because they will see that it is a very normal step for making any business strategy. And in the end, you kind of have to look at your organization, your NGO, as a business, because maybe you don't want to make profit, but you have to make it work, you have to make it run. And there's many things we can learn from businesses in the NGO sector, and one of the most important things, I think, is that things cost money, that you have to assign a budget to certain steps in your strategy so that they can actually work. And this, of course, goes for the fundraising strategy as well. So one of the most important arguments, I would say, for spending money on fundraising is that there's almost nothing that gives you a better return on investment. If you start looking at it as an investment and not a cost, like we talked about before, you will very quickly realize that it's a great return on investment. There have been some studies, and some of them indicate that if it's quality training, it's quality tools, that it can create an annual rate of return of 20 to 30%. And if you think of anything you get from the bank, which is at the moment sometimes negative, and it's never more than 1 or 2%, you realize spending money on fundraising is actually the greatest thing you can do as an organization. Also, many times we have the case that foundations, but also NGOs, have some leftover money, and they think, oh, it's smart to invest it, and then we will kind of benefit from the profits we make. But that goes almost to zero, and it's risky. But if you spend that money on fundraising education, fundraising tools, anything related to fundraising, the probability that you get a much higher return on investment is very high. So this is one very good argument that you can use when you talk to your seniors, to your board. You say, if I get better at this game, we will get more money, because if you help me educate myself in how to write a grant, how to structure my proposal, how to address donors, how to network, how to research donors, we will actually get more grants, and more grants means more money. So this is a very, very direct benefit. And yeah, if you start regarding this as an investment, you will see that it makes sense. And like I said, it's one of the things we can learn from businesses, because business owners, normally they take whatever money they make, they invest again, because they know that you have to keep moving. And it's the same in the NGO sector. Once we just stop and we don't teach our staff anything anymore, we don't develop, and then things stop. If there is a budget, fundraising is one of the smartest areas you can invest it in. Then the second thing that we talked about, that many seniors, many board members think, oh well, but if we invest in fundraising education, our staff will just want more money, or they will move to the next organization, they will leave us immediately. And like I said, yes, turnover in this sector is very high, but I would always argue that happy employees stay longer. One of the reasons probably why turnover is so high is that employees are not happy. They don't feel supported many times. Many suffer from burnout because it's very hard working conditions. So if you as an employer, as a board member, show your staff that you respect them, that you want them to thrive, that you support them, that you trust them, that is something that will build a good relationship, and that will make your staff stay longer. And this is something you can also tell them. If you're on an individual basis, and if you want them to spend a very high amount of money on a specific course that you want to take, whatever, you can always make an agreement with them and say, okay, you pay this course for me, and I agree to stay for 1 year, for 2 years, whatever you want to agree on. But these are individual agreements. But I always think in general, supporting your staff and making them grow is going to support your relationship with them, and that's going to make them stay longer. Happy staff will stay, I think. One of the reasons for high turnover rates is if people are unhappy. It's not necessarily because they always want to seek new opportunities. Of course, there's some people who will leave after taking a training, but there's other people who will stay because they see that they are supported, they see that they have your trust, or the trust of the board, and they will then be better at their job. So it still makes sense. Even if you lose a couple of people, those other people that stay will be better, because they will be a better employee, because they like the organization they work for, they like the working environment, and they will be better at their job because they gained new skills. Another argument that you can use when you talk to your board or your seniors is that investing in fundraising education of staff will make the sustainability plan much stronger. So in one of the last free webinars we did, you can look it up on our channel. We talked about this, the importance of the sustainability plan and why you should invest time and energy on making a good sustainability plan, and why it is something where you can distinguish yourself from other people that apply maybe for the same grant. It's very important, and it's something that will influence your entire proposal and your entire work, basically. If you want to do it well, it will influence everything. And if you can show, and sometimes you can even show that in a proposal, that you educate your own staff, that you make sure that they know everything they need to know about fundraising, it will make your plan much stronger, because the donor will see, oh, they are really investing in their organization so they can be financially sustainable. They can they can achieve organizational sustainability, because then their own staff will know how to apply for money, to apply for grants with the government, with other donors, with institutions. They will know how to fundraise from private persons. They will know all these things, and it's going to be internal. So it's going to be within your organization, and you don't rely on anybody from the outside. So your entire organization will work according to a much more sustainable model, and donors see that and they appreciate that. So it's something that will actually help you to to show that you are professional, and that you want to make this work in the long term. Yeah, and then finally, investing in fundraising will really raise the level of professionalism on your organization. So, like I said before, when I look at overhead and it's super low, then I don't expect a lot from that organization, because either they're hiding somewhere and lying to me that they actually have overhead cost, or they just gave tasks that should not be tasks of a project manager to the project managers, or they're winging it, or maybe they're just working with volunteers. But it's not going to be, if it's at a certain scale, it's not going to be a professional organization, because if you have 20 employees and if you have 10 projects, then you can't just wing the entire operation. You need an accountant, you need someone to manage things, you need a fundraiser, you need someone to organize everything. And if you don't have those people, and if you're not willing to invest into the development of these people, then you're not very professional. So that shows. And partners and potential donors will appreciate if you do. So of course you can also use, or you can tell your seniors, your board, educating you in fundraising can be used for public relations as well. You can post about this on Facebook and say, we are sending, or your organization can post, we're sending 10 of our employees to this workshop to Nairobi, and they will learn about fundraising to sustain our projects, or to become more sustainable, or just to be independent. And donors and potential partners, and also private donors, will see this if you communicate it in a smart way, and they will notice that you invest in your stuff, you invest in your project, you want them to thrive, and that you're going to be a good partner, and it's going to be appreciated. People will recognize if you treat your staff respectfully, and if you make smart decisions that will ensure that your organization is successful in the long term. It will be appreciated by official donors if you write a proposal, as long as you find a way to communicate this. And it definitely will be appreciated by private donors, because they really like it if they see that you send your people, that organizations send their staff to to trainings, and make sure that they learn as well and they develop, because that's what good projects should do. They should change things on the ground, and it also starts with giving staff the opportunity to learn and to gain knowledge for themselves, that they then again can use for whatever comes next. And in general, your work will just become better. So the quality of work that you present will become better. So that's a huge argument for educating you. And this doesn't only go for fundraising education, this kind of goes for everything. No? If you're an accountant and you have to work with a new software and you don't know how to work it, then it's going to take you forever to teach yourself. If you buy a training, maybe that's a certain amount upfront, but it will save you so much time. And like we did the calculation last time, if you spend 10 hours a month on something, that's a lot of money for your organization because your organization has to pay you. So if your board or your seniors are smart and look at this from an economic perspective, you can also tell them that it makes sense from an economic perspective to let you learn effectively and not waste time that you would otherwise spend working productively. Because if you have to teach yourself or if you have to do something without the knowledge, you will always take longer, and that is money lost. Yeah, and this is also the topic of this slide, kind of. Normally, the economic argument is something that gets to board members, to seniors, because they, by not letting you educate yourself, by not letting you go to trainings, they want to save money. But if you can explain to them, if you can show to them that actually letting you go would save them money, that's a very good argument, and it is often something that can convince them. So letting you go to fundraising education or letting you invest in fundraising tools will save you resources in the long run. So there's no need for consultants, for example. Consultants can be extremely expensive, and like I said, they are one of the things that many times board members and seniors are happy to pay for, but it's a high cost and often low reward because like I said, you never know. If you have a consultant write your proposal, you don't know if that proposal is going to be successful. Of course, you can work with consultants in a way that makes sense. Consultants can also teach you. Consultants can organize trainings. Consultants can do specific parts of the fundraising process. But if you learn all these skills internally, then you don't have the need to hire consultants anymore. So that's going to save you a lot of money. So money that you want to spend on consultants is much more smartly spent on educating staff members, because then you have the knowledge there and you can go back to them over and over again. If a consultant has to do the same task 10 times, you have to pay them 10 times. If a staff member does it, you just pay the time, because if they know it, you can always keep going back to them. Then there's a learning effect that also will spill over to other areas. Fundraising especially is something that influences many areas of the project management process. So if you learn how to become a better fundraiser, you will learn how to organize yourself better, how to organize your documents, how to organize your knowledge, how to streamline things. You will see how fundraising decisions inform the entire process of project management, etc. So you will have a lot of spillover effects. If you educate good fundraisers, they will also learn a lot for the project management process. And the same goes for reporting and monitoring and evaluation, because all these parts are also part of the fundraising process. Kind of how to write a report is determined by how the proposal was written. So it's connected, and everybody will learn from this. But especially reporting and monitoring and evaluation are parts where project managers many times struggle, and where a lot of money is lost because it takes longer than it should take, or mistakes are made that then in the end result in money and funds lost. So educating stuff in the field of fundraising has spillover effects to other areas that are very beneficial. So just to generalize, if an organization decides to educate their staff, to let them buy tools that will actually help them, it will save resources in the long run. It might be an investment, sometimes a big investment in the beginning, but many courses are also very economical. If you look at our courses that we offer at our curriculum, you will see the courses are very economic, so it's not even a big investment, but it will save resources in the long run. If people really commit to learn and to apply what they learned, it will always save resources. Yeah, and those are basically the arguments I would say that you can use to convince your seniors, to convince board members that investing in fundraising is actually a very good thing that will help your entire organization, will make you become more professional, will make you look more professional, give a better impression to potential partners and donors, and make the working atmosphere just better. Because if staff feels like they're supported, if staff feels like um, they are seen, they will be more happy and they will be more productive. So all of this points into the direction of making this a very smart and also a very rational decision in the end, because it will give a good return on investment. Um, like I mentioned in the beginning, we sell online courses. So of course we will be very happy if you use the knowledge gained in this webinar to maybe convince your seniors to buy one of our courses if you want. But of course there's many other things out there. There's classroom trainings. There's specific trainings in your area. You can also subscribe to our newsletter where we share information about training as well. So just check out a page, proposalsforngos.com, and sign up for our newsletter to get that information. If you want to check our course program, either one of our staff members or I will post the link to our school in the comments. Our online school is called Philanthropia now, because we're switching from the name Proposals for NGOs to Philanthropia, but it's the same course program. We have very basic courses, we have very advanced courses. You can find something for everybody. So our flagship course is the 5 obstacles on your way to fundraising success and how to overcome them. It's a very comprehensive 5-week course where you learn all the basics of fundraising, how to make a strategy, how to network, how to research, how to write the proposal. Everything is included. Then we have module courses where you can just learn about one of those modules, like here the fundraising strategy. I talked about this before. This has very important elements that you can also use again at the scale of your entire organization. And you can see it's just $50, so it's not a very expensive course. But if you take it and if you apply all the knowledge you gain there, it will definitely change the way you approach your work, and it will definitely change the pipeline for your fundraising. So, and we have more advanced courses as well, like fundraising from USAID, from the European Commission, from European foundations, from corporations, which is an amazing course that you should check out because it's not as easy as it sounds like. Yeah, so just hop over, check out our course program. And actually, we have a very good offer today because you joined this webinar, you stayed with us until now. You can even get 30% off on all courses. So just imagine one of those module courses that will really change something for you. Normally costs $50, now it's $30 off. So I think that will end up at like 35 or something. So that's not a lot of money. I'm sure with the knowledge you gained today, you will be able to convince your seniors, your board members to spend that small amount of money, because with the knowledge you gain, you will definitely become much more efficient and then ultimately much more successful at fundraising. And that is what they want from you. No, that is how they kind of judge your success. So with the coupon code PFN users, you can get 30% off any course on our website today. So just please check out our curriculum, use the code PFN users, and you can get a discount on all of the courses. We also have very basic courses for beginners, like how to fundraise when your NGO is brand new. If you want to start with one of those, just hop over and check out the curriculum we have there. But again, all the knowledge you gain today in this webinar, you can use for any fundraising investment that you would like to make, that you feel like would make sense for you and your organization. It's not only online courses, it's training as well. It can be workshops, it can be visiting a conference, it can be buying some apps that help you to manage data, it can be buying access to a database that will help your research, etc. There's many things included under the umbrella of fundraising investments. But again, if you're looking for an online course, please check out our curriculum. I'm sure you will find something that will be of great use for you. Okay, so with this, I'm coming to the end of this presentation today. So there's time for questions. Yeah, thank you very much for attending. I will switch back to the camera so I can directly answer questions, and I think I can also see the questions on the screen if there are any. I couldn't see the screen until now, so let's switch back. Here I am, and let's see if there are any questions that you had. Okay, well, I can't see any questions, unfortunately, because my computer doesn't let me see them. So maybe there are none. I'm not sure. I have this small bug. So maybe if one of our staff members is still attending, maybe they can send me over if there are any questions through a different way directly to my phone, because I cannot see the live chat, unfortunately. But maybe there are also no questions. I'm not sure. I can't really see how it is going there. But I'm really happy that you all attended and that you took part in this webinar. We offer webinars for different topics every 4 weeks. So just make sure you subscribe to our newsletter. You follow us on Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel, of course, because then you will get notifications. If you check out our other videos, you will see we already have a video about, I think, fundraising strategy, proposal writing, donor research, etc. So you can check them out. There's a lot of free information available. Yeah, and if you're looking for advanced information, I really recommend you check the online course curriculum, because there's really great courses that we have put together. The trainers on the channel are, I do some courses, but our other trainers are Eric. He's from Holland, but he has lived in the United States for many, many years, and he has worked all over the world and raised millions and millions of dollars for different organizations. He has worked with UNICEF and the ILO and many different organizations, and he is very knowledgeable. So he does many of our courses as well. And we have Christopher. He's also a consultant with more than a decade of experience, and he also fundraised millions of dollars from different donors. And his experience is very broad, but he particularly knows about the Gulf donors and corporate fundraising. And he also has 2 courses on our platform that I really recommend. The course that I personally like most is corporate fundraising, because that is something that sounds so straightforward. Like getting money from corporations sounds very simple, but it's actually not, because we kind of talk a different language. It came up in this webinar as well, that sometimes we don't look at running an NGO like running a business. But of course, if you approach business owners, they look at everything from their business perspective. So many times we kind of speak a different language, and Christopher is very good in explaining how to learn to speak their language and how to actually connect with them and develop a sales pitch that works. So yeah, I recommend you check out that course. Maybe our staff can also post the link to that course in the comments, because it's a really great one. But now I'm receiving questions on my phone. Thank you very much for forwarding them. I don't know why I can't see the live stream. So one question is, can you say more on why we should not hire a grant writer? Okay, Asim Sharma. Yeah, so in general, if you hire a grant writer, first thing is that you always have, normally you have the idea that you hire a consultant and they come in and they do their work and you don't have to do anything. But with a grant writer, you actually have to do a lot of supporting work, because they don't know all the information, they don't know your project, they don't know where you're coming from, what's the path of your organization. So you actually have to provide a lot of the information. So it is a time commitment for you or for your staff as well. So it's not as free and independent as you think it would be. And then if you hire a grant writer only for writing grants, of course it can make sense for your organization. I'm not saying that it's always wrong, but I would always recommend rather thinking about spending that money on developing these capacities within your own staff. Because if you have a grant writer, they write your proposal and then they leave again. You send out that proposal and you don't get the grant. Then what do? You can't send that same proposal to another donor because you have to adjust it for every donor. So either you call back the proposal writer, the grant writer, you have to pay them again, or you try to adjust it yourself, but then you kind of have to go through everything again. So either you have double work because then you have to do the work again yourself, or you have to keep calling them back again and back again. If you spend that money in educating your own staff, you can do the process within your organization, and that's normally cheaper because before I said $20 per day or per hour. I mean that's probably wrong. Probably depending on the country that you're in, you pay more or less for stuff, or you get paid more or less. But a consultant is almost always more expensive because they have to cover. They're not employees, so they have to cover for times where they are free, etc. So it's almost always more expensive to pay a consultant. So in the end, if you look at like after 10 years, if you keep hiring a grant writer, it's going to end up being very expensive, and they can never give a guarantee that their grants their proposals actually will go through. You can hire consultants, and it makes a lot of sense if it's, like I said, if it's singular tasks. Like if you hire a consultant to do your donor research, to help you edit the proposal in the end, or if you have someone who is specialized in USAID and you want to apply with USAID, if you write the bulk of the proposal and then have someone come in helping you edit it, helping you tailoring it to USAID, that I would say makes sense as long as you're in the room, because then you can also learn from them. But completely outsourcing your proposal writing for me doesn't make a lot of sense, because it will just create a dependency on people from the outside, and probably your proposals will also not be as strong, because to get that inside knowledge that you have, a consultant would have to dig very deep, and most of the times they don't have the time for that and the resources. So I hope that answers your question a little bit better. So Romas asks if we have examples where we can find this number that I said, the 20 to 30% investing in fundraising, the return on investment, or the annual return rate. So actually that data I took from an article, and if you go to our homepage, Proposals for NGOs, there's an article actually that promotes this webinar, and in that webinar, in that article, I also quoted the same number, and it's linked to the original article. So you can just click that link and you will see where I took that information from. I don't exactly remember the name of the office that did that study, but it's linked in that article. So maybe again, if Amrita or Priti is still on, maybe we can post the link to the article on our page. Otherwise, please go to proposalsforngos.com, and it should be on the front page, the article about this webinar, about this topic, why you should invest in fundraising. And in that article, you'll find some points again, some bullet points that you can use, and you will also find the link to the page where I took that information from. Of course, it always depends. No? If you take fundraising education and you don't implement any of the points that you learn, or if you're just not talented, if you can't really tell a story, if you can't convince anybody, if you don't have that ability to personally click with people, it's always still difficult. And just by going to a course, just by attending a course, you will not magically suddenly get all the grants. But educating yourself in an area will always contribute to becoming better and to becoming more effective. And like I said, for that specific number, because I was also surprised, and I thought it's a great number to convince people, because if you see that it's a strong number, you just click the link. Actually, that article is a little bit longer and about the same topic, and they talk more about foundations that invest their savings to get the return on investment and to work with that. And it makes the argument that in nowadays economy where you can almost get no missing the word, like from the bank you will get no percentage if you put money into the bank. Sometimes it's even negative. So in today's economy, it makes much more sense to invest in fundraising instead of putting your money or putting a foundation's money into the bank. Okay, those are the two questions that got forwarded to me. Check again if there's another one. But yeah, I think those are the questions. I'm sorry that I'm having this issue with the live chat. Thank you very much for being here, being in this webinar. I hope you liked it. Please make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Facebook, sign up to our newsletter so you don't miss anything else. We'll have another free webinar within the next weeks. We will announce it, and I hope you can join us again. For today, I will just say thank you very much. Please stay safe, be well, and talk to you soon.